Welcome to the Power Couples Rock podcast, where our mission is to build a collective community of marriages, where we encourage, inspire, and support one another in order to have masterful marriages. We're Carlos, Catherine, Chris, and Sonia. Please check us out, powercouplesrock.com. Follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. We believe that one of the most amazing legacies we can leave in life is a great marriage. So we hope you'll listen, learn, and love the conversation. Let's power up. Hello and welcome once again to the Power Couples Rock podcast. My name is Chris, and thank you so much for pressing play and listening to us. I am going to introduce my most favorite people in the universe around me on this table today, and that I cannot do this without first introducing my two most favorite people in Gwinnett County and the universe. Mr. and Mrs. Carlos and Catherine Green.
Hey.
Yo.
What's up, Power Couples Rock community?
What's up?
Oh, I'm excited about tonight.
I just get electric around you guys. You guys just fire me up. I'm fired up.
Guys, we are so excited tonight.
I cannot go without introducing my most beautiful wife, who tonight has admitted she's just all out of sorts. But I love her nonetheless. Sonia, say hello to the people.
Hello, Power Couples.
So today we want to talk about 5 truths to breathe life into your marriage. And we've got a conversation that I'm pretty stoked about to get into. And this is something that the four of us it did a little pregame on, but of course, in true Power Couples Rock podcast ways, we don't do too much pregame because we love the conversation.
Yes.
And that's what we don't. If you pre-plan it, we write it all out. It's like boring. You might as well just read it, right?
Right.
We're
That's
not going to do
correct.
that. We're not going to do that. But these are the 5 truths that we thought could breathe life into your marriage. And I think to set things off, as we normally do, I'm going to roll this over to you, Carlos, to set the table in terms of Scripture and how this relates to these 5 truths.
I appreciate that, Chris. And again, Chris and Sonia, one of our favorite couples in the universe. We're ready to start these truths. The couple.
He did say
The
one
couple.
of.
Man, I think we're getting ticked down. Are we
I
getting
know.
ticked down?
You would
Not at
never
all.
get ticked
Not
down.
at
all.
We talked about you all. Talk about you guys all the time. So
One of.
y'all are with us. I love this. But I wanted to set the table for this conversation I'm extremely stoked about having about these 5 truths. And when we're talking about these truths, I wanted to actually set the table with the scripture that we want to really hone in on for this particular PowerPod. And it comes from Proverbs 3, chapter 3, verses 3 and 4, who is written by Solomon. And it says, "Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man." That is such a powerful scripture. And I think that that is a truth within itself that we can actually live off of. So I want to, if you guys don't mind, I would love to be the one that kind of starts us off with these 5 truths.
Please.
Is that okay?
Please.
Yeah,
Can we do
course.
that?
Yes.
Yeah, man.
Sure.
Okay, so for you listeners out there, if you've got a pen or take a mental note, please write these down. So this is the first one. The first truth is regarding covenant, our covenant relationship that we actually have with each other. And I love this, that for me, this is the foundational truth that we have in our relationships, in our marriage, is in covenant. And we understand that in the covenant, we know that God actually created it. He established it, and he created examples or gave us examples of the covenant. He did that with Abraham. He did it with Noah, and he did it with Moses.
Yep.
So he provides those examples for us so that when we enter into our relationship, our marital relationships, he gives us the blueprint for what a covenant looks like and how we are to respond in a covenant relationship. So a covenant relationship is very permanent.
Mm-hmm.
It's not temporary.
That's right.
Also in a covenant relationship, we know it's between two persons and not an exchange of things or stuff and things, but it's very relational. And then it's also to serve the other person, not that you would be served.
Yep.
And that's where when Christ said, I didn't come to be served, but I came that I could serve others and give life and give it more abundantly.
Yep.
So I'm extremely excited to just understand that first truth is covenant relationships or covenant. What do you guys say?
I say, like, everything you just said, the way the sort of the world is happening right now is the polar opposite. It's not about how I can serve my spouse or my prospective spouse.
That's right.
Is how is this working for me?
Mm-hmm.
It's completely opposite.
Completely opposite.
Right? It's like, well, this person is the right person for me because they do this for me.
They complete me.
Right.
And I want to be happy.
Right.
Right. So I'm looking for my happiness and my fulfillment out of that person.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you go to the other scriptures too, if we look at Genesis 2:24 and we look at like Mark 10:7 as well, and Ephesians 5:31, it says, for this cause, to glorify God, for this cause, a man shall leave his mother and father and be united to his wife, and the two shall become, what is it?
One
Flesh.
Right.
There. So already that's that covenant relationship that's actually established between a man and a woman that is supposed to be permanent, relational, and just making sure that it's for the benefit of the other person in serving them.
Yeah.
So I love that foundational first truth that we have.
I need to interrupt this for a special announcement. If you want to get more into what covenant is about, and sort of, what Carlos is talking about, we did a podcast a little while ago.
Yes.
And if you're on your little podcast application here, you could dial it back and sort of look at, and the title of the podcast is Marriage Glue.
Oh, yes.
And
very popular
we talk very in depth about covenant, and we've got a lot of feedback from married couples about that podcast. It seems to be one of the most popular ones, but also from prospective couples who are going to be married as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so those of you who are longtime listeners of Power Couples Rock podcast, or have listened to just only a few, and you go back and you listen to Marriage Glue and you feel like this is something you want to turn someone else on who's going to get married, I think that's a great way to start with a foundation as to what covenant means. So before you get into it and everybody's all, super happy and romantic and everything, let's get that foundation, put together there with covenant, Marriage Glue.
Yeah, I think that's truly has helped me to be very insightful in my relationship by understanding that as the foundation, and it takes out that selfishness, and you become selflessness, and so I think it shifts your focus.
That's right.
When you're wanting to serve. And I know in the community, I work for a nonprofit, and I know when I'm out serving the community, I get so much more out of serving others than what more can I get out of it when I go into my relationship with my husband. If I can get so much out of that when I learn to serve him internally, as long as I'm, having that foundation. And so I think that really gives me just a clarity in where I'm going in my relationship.
Baby, you've been serving me well lately. Thank you.
Lately,
Not just on the tennis court.
Since
It's like Janet Jackson. What have you
1991.
done for me lately? You served me well.
Since 1991.
We've got a strong covenant. Exactly. For 28 years, you've been serving it up. Thank you for the covenant.
All right. So the first truth to breathe life into your marriage is covenant.
Yes.
And the second truth to breathe life into your marriage Sonia, what do you got?
It's connection.
Connection.
Oh, yeah.
Covenant, then connection.
So connection can mean several different things. I think when we think about connection, we think of physical connection. We think of an emotional, mental connection.
Yep.
But I think the one that we want to focus on tonight is a spiritual connection, which I think kind of goes hand in hand with covenant, in that it is quite important to have a spiritual connection. But there are some of you out there, I'm assuming, that could be in a situation where maybe your spouse is not spiritually where you are. So I am going to speak a little on things that you might be able to do if you find yourself in this situation, that maybe could enhance your relationship spiritually, but also give those of you who are in that situation maybe some hope that there's a God out there that can turn things around for you.
Yes.
So I think the first thing that you want to do is first understand, I think, that we aren't responsible for our spouse. I say husbands, but husbands and or wives, our spouse's spirituality or where they are spiritually. Maybe they're weaker than you are spiritually, but we aren't responsible for that. That's something that we can't. It's not our job, and it's something that I don't think we should take on ourselves. It's something that we have to rely on God to do.
Right.
And I think that leads into the second thing that we can do is pray.
Yes.
And the only way that's going to happen is for God to be able to work those great things in your spouse's marriage is going to be through prayer, and the prayer that you do for not only the salvation, if your spouse happens not to be saved, but also that you would be an example to your spouse, that everything that you would do would lead your spouse to see who God is, and really without saying anything, and that they would be able to discern that that's what's happening.
Yes.
So prayer, I think, is a big one. I also think that you don't want to preach. Anyone out there agree with that?
Oh my God.
Yes.
You said that 5 times. I get it, right?
Yes.
Oh, I
It
just
does.
saw this thing, honey. I want to show it to you on YouTube. This is how you can be a better Christian.
Here's that book that I've been wanting you to read.
Exactly.
I think it's important to not preach to our spouses, because that only sends up defense mechanisms and makes it a little bit more difficult for them to want to see your perspective if all you're doing is preaching and nagging. And
Yep.
Carlos, don't they say something in the Bible about nagging wives? Yeah. So yeah, I just
Isn't that right?
I think I remember that somewhere in there.
Somewhere in there.
But I think that it's just important for us to remember that God has this all. He really does, even though it may not seem like it all the time. I think leading by example is huge. I just think that that's all you can really do is to do what you would want your spouse to do and reflect that upon them, instead of, well, I'm going to do to you what you're doing to me, is not really going to lead your spouse to want to live the life you're living.
Well, it does remind me of that scripture that, the basic scripture here is do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Right.
And so how would you actually want to be treated, even if I'm not on the same spiritual level or plane with you?
Yeah.
I
Right.
still I don't want to be preached to,
Yep.
Absolutely.
right? I don't want you to own my spirituality,
Absolutely.
because that is a personal relationship that I actually have with God.
Right.
But I'm hoping that we can connect so that we can make sure that we're moving our relationship forward together.
Well, I think it's important too not to do to them what they're doing to you. Like, you don't want to reflect the negative. Well, they're being negative, so I'm going to be negative, because in that perspective,
hard, though, isn't
it's hard to not want to do that when your spouse isn't at the same place that you are spiritually, and you want that so much for them. It's hard not to interject that or project that negativity, but I think that only pushes them away. It doesn't pull them in.
Right.
So in those situations, I think that's a situation you wouldn't want to do to your spouse, what maybe they're doing to you. You want to do those things that are going to draw them closer to God.
So what do you think are the benefits of when a couple is connected spiritually, mentally, physically, and emotionally? what do you think the benefits are of that?
There's a sense of togetherness. There's not I think of a battle. Like there's less of a battle going on within that relationship to try to get one person to where you are, or to make that one person equal to where you are spiritually. And so there could be a battle there. And I think if you're on the same page and doing the same things, it brings more of a togetherness that you're not battling on a constant basis.
I also think that because being connected spiritually is so paramount, it is so important out of these other elements of being connected, whether it's physical, mental, emotional. Being connected spiritually is so important. It almost feels like you got to start there. And and doing as Sonia's sort of talking about doing, knowing what you can affect yourself and what you need to let God work through by, praying and knowing what you can control. Because if you think you can do it yourself, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. And it's just going to lead to more frustration. And the frustration is going to lead to some other feelings that are just going to resentment, all those other things that are just going to be weeds and challenges in your marriage. And so just sort of like knowing that you need to have that spiritual foundation and at the same time knowing what you can affect and what you need to let God affect in your marriage is super important. So I almost feel like that's like number one.
Yes.
And the others you can work on for sure, and you should. But I feel like if you start with that one, it's going to make the other ones a little easier, maybe.
Sure,
So
absolutely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love what Sonia was saying earlier here, just about we are more powerful as one,
Right.
instead of two separate ones. So again, I don't know why, but I'm loving this scripture that comes to mind now, Ecclesiastes 4:9-12. So I'm just challenging all of our listeners to go out there and look up that scripture. It does talk about two are better than one. And then it actually talks about at the end that a three-stranded cord is not easily broken. And that's where we actually incorporate God into our relationship. So I completely am on point with you and your connection.
That's awesome stuff. So we talked about the 5 truths to breathe life into your marriage. We talked about covenant. We just talked about connection. And if I could go
for it.
I want to go. Please,
Go.
Mr.
Okay,
Mr.
Chris.
Cotter. Okay. Community.
Yes.
And, we've talked about community before, and, we're going to talk about it again and again and again and
It's
again,
so
because
important.
you're absolutely important. And you know what? I did not know how important community was until I met Carlos and Catherine.
Our most favorite people
In
in
the
the
universe.
universe.
Yes.
They
They taught me what community was all about. And it's about surrounding yourself with like-minded people who want to grow their marriage together and in the right way. Right? So we talked about, connecting spiritually. And if you want to grow your marriage, if you want to get powered up in your marriage, if you want to breathe life into your marriage, you need to find people around you, married couples around you that want to do that same thing, that want to get into the Word, that want to surround themselves with other. Iron sharpening iron is another phrase that we use all the time. And it's so true, because if you isolate yourself, or you isolate yourself with your spouse, and you think you can do it alone, it's not going to happen for you. You've got to extend yourself. You got to put yourself into maybe a somewhat uncomfortable situation. I can speak for myself. I was not comfortable going into a community group meeting.
I know. I remember that.
I was not comfortable at all. And I told Sonia that, but I did it. And I know she prayed.
Yes.
I told Carlos.
I know
She did tell me. I was like, okay, I'm going to watch out for him.
She was, maybe the first couple meetings I was a bit standoffish, and it's not that I was skeptical about what was being talked about or anything like that. I just was not it was outside of my comfort zone,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And here I am on a podcast with you
Wow.
guys, right? And we've been doing life together now for 8-9 years, or
Yes.
however many it is. We still have a great community of married couples and families that we do life together with. And here to tell you that if you're listening to this, I would just encourage you to get out of your comfort zone and find other married couples to start building your community, because it will without a doubt strengthen and breathe life
Mhm.
into your marriage.
Yeah, you can just do life together, and you sometimes don't have to have this agenda,
Mm.
but just get to know
Yep.
people. Just get to know other couples, and then that can just develop into just a deeper relationship to where you may feel like you can talk about some of those sensitive issues that maybe you're struggling with.
Yep.
And you've been on this island by yourself, and you felt like we're the only ones going through whatever that is. But if you just open yourself up to just invite 2 or 3 couples, maybe in a space,
Yep.
and just begin to do, just have time together. That's most
Or
important.
just one couple, right?
One couple.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
what's the 2 or more, right?
Where they're gathered.
where they're gathered, sure.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And that God's going to be in that,
Yes.
and certainly has been. So and if you are at all curious or want to hear more about our thoughts on community, we go a lot more in depth on a past podcast. I feel like we keep on going back to the past podcast, but a lot of new listeners may not have gone back to other ones. So if you want to hear more about community and maybe how you can get plugged in, more specifically to community, there is a podcast that is basically under it was the third of the non-negotiables series that we did. It was called Community Rocks.
Correct.
So if you go back on Power Couples Rock, and of course, everyone that's listening is already subscribing, right?
Yes.
Yes,
If you're
yes.
this
They're
far, and you
subscribing,
haven't
they're
subscribed,
liking,
you're gonna
yes.
hit pause right now.
They're
and you're
doing
gonna go
reviews.
subscribe. Yes.
Yes.
That's good, Carlos.
They're
You're
doing
actually asking
reviews.
people
Yes,
to do
we need
reviews
your
now.
reviews.
They're becoming part of our community.
They are.
Whoa.
Part of our
Whoa.
community.
They are part of our community.
Wow,
High
Sonia
five.
bringing it full circle.
Yeah,
love
we'll
it.
talk about that because it is so important and so relevant at all stages of our marriages.
Mm-hmm.
We're in getting close to our emptiness stage, but we didn't forsake community even when we had children. So
Mhm.
community has always been a part of our relationship, our marriage, and
Mhm.
and it will continue even when I'm in my little rocking chair on my porch.
I'll be rocking beside
You
you,
be rocking
Catherine.
Powers Couple Rocks.
Power up!
We're rocking.
Oh man, when we're old like
love
that, are
it.
we going to say power up? I don't know.
Yes.
We're not going to feel like powering up. We're going to
We're
power
going to
up our
keep powering
broken
it
hips.
up.
Okay, so we
Yes.
talked about covenant.
Yeah.
Yes.
We talked about connection.
Yes.
I just blathered about community.
I love it.
Mm.
And so we got 2 more.
2 more.
Yes.
Catherine, what's the
Can't
next
wait.
one?
Oh, I want to talk about consistency.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. That's going to hit me right in the chest.
I need your word, Catherine. Give us a word.
Give us a word, babe.
I don't know if I have a great
You
word,
got a
but I'm going
word,
to give
babe.
you what I have in my heart about consistency. Well, I know that is something that, let me off the bat say, that's something that Carlos and I had struggled with for a little bit because of I would say the busyness we had in our life.
Yeah.
On certain things, like having the kids going here and there, him working, I'm working, and it was just like just a moving target. But what made us consistent is when we sat down and put some parameters around our goals and things that we wanted to accomplish in life, and so we created an hour of power. And that made us consistent. And we were intentional about our hour of power. So I know learning if you do something continuously over and over and over again, it becomes a part of your DNA. It's
Yep.
who you are,
Mhm.
especially if something is breathing life into your relationship.
Yes.
And finding that thing or that action that really takes your relationship to another level of the thing that you struggle with. When we spoke it out, we said, we got to be consistent in some things. We said we're going to do this. Then we don't do it. I shouldn't say we don't do it, but we may not do it as often as we would like. And I'll tell you, once we put it down to pen to paper and we said this is what we were going to do, and we did it over a period of time as far as our hour of power, it has just become a part of who we are and what we do.
Yeah.
And so we share that with other couples and say, with today's time and how we have all of these social media images and work and job and just career, everything that's coming at us, we have to be able to have some structured times to get something consistent in our lives.
Yeah.
And I can just say, I remember my grandmother's recipe of she would make barbecue. This was back in the day when I would eat some barbecue meat, but I don't eat meat now.
I'll have some.
And nothing around. And I remember I would when I got married, I called my grandmother and said, "So how did you make that barbecue sauce?" And grandmothers have their own way of doing this, where you put a tinge of this and a pinch of that, and this,
a dab of that.
You didn't know exactly what it was, but I find myself, if I had a specific ingredient or recipe to go by, I knew I was going to make that item or that food item the same every time. But I couldn't do my grandmother's because it was just a pinch of this and a tinge of that and a taste it on your finger and there it is. And so, but I learned through those experiences over time how important consistency is in your life.
So can I give an example then? Because what you just talked about, that it's like whenever we go into Chick-fil-A, right? We expect the same level of service and quality of food every single time.
What about Popeyes?
Popeyes.
Do you expect
We'll go to Popeyes.
Okay.
I'm going to stick with Chick-fil-A right now.
Yeah.
No shade to Chick-fil-A. No shade to Popeyes. But with Chick-fil-A, it's extremely consistent. When you walk in, you're going to get the same greeting.
Yep.
The same level of service. And when you order your food, when you bite down on, for those people that eat chicken, when you bite down in that chicken sandwich, you expect the same level of consistency. But for me, the waffle fries, right?
I was going to say, what are you ordering at Chick-fil-A?
Waffle fries.
Waffle fries and the
fries.
salad with no cheese.
And the salad with no cheese.
A
The
milkshake?
same level of consistency over and over again, right?
They have those same 2 tomatoes in that salad, but anyway.
But it's still good. It's amazing. And so over the years, you've come to expect that level of service and that level of quality of food. And it's the same thing. My last one is with a professional athlete, right? So we're big tennis buffs. So when we get to the top of the game with like a Roger Federer or Serena Williams, and you know that they have worked that consistency over and over, that same thing over and over and over, and they build that muscle, that DNA, that essence, that it just becomes a part of what they do. And I just think for marriages, we need to be on the Roger Federer, the Serena Williams level in everything that we do. That's what we should be striving for as one unit. So I love your consistency. See, babe, I told you you're going to bring a word out of me. I love this.
Okay, and I have to say to all of you listeners out there that this is the reason why you should have a good community of married couples, because you can learn so much from those couples, just like Chris and I are learning from Carlos and Catherine.
100%.
So this is just a perfect example of why that's important.
Iron sharpening iron.
Absolutely.
Right.
One more thing on consistency that I just want to add to what Catherine brought to that was, I think a real important element to consistency is accountability.
Ooh.
Because I know that Sonia and I have aspirations at different times, right? I really wish that we would do certain things, and Sonia wishes that we would be doing certain things. And we need to be accountable to each other. Like, we talked about doing this hour of power, or we talked about doing this. Let's be accountable to each other. Let's work. Let's work here. Let's remind each other. Let's not let things slip.
Yes.
Right. We have to be accountable. And if you're connected with a community and you're sharing things like that, that community will keep you accountable as well.
Yes.
And it's only for the betterment of your marriage, which is most important.
Yes,
Right?
I agree. We just recently had a conversation, Carlos and I, because our schedules are very full, and there are some things that we're looking to do, and I want to be able to support him more in some of because there's so many people that want maybe to meet with us or to have dialogue, and so I want to be able to support you more with our community group, with our church group, with and I said, so why don't we just set a specific date and time so that we can just meet about those two items. We're not going to have a whole slew of things. We're going to talk about those two items because I want to make sure, because what we was finding happening in our dialogue is that we would, in just an instant, it'll be like 2 days before, okay, what we going to talk about? What we going to do? What we going to do? And I was just like, I don't like last minute things. I said,
I'm the same way.
because we're pouring into people and we really need to take the time. And I don't want to put it all on him. And I know that as you said, the scripture, two are better than one. And I said, I want to make sure that we're supporting one another. And so we've agreed to just sit down on one particular day. And for that hour, we're not going to take calls. We're going to focus on that because I believe we'll be able to pour more into our community and then pour into us if we give it the time.
So just for everybody out there, she sent me a meeting invite.
Sometimes you need to do that.
Yeah.
Well,
you got to.
Meeting invite. We're meeting every Wednesday night at this time.
That's what Chris
to talk
would do.
about these two things.
That's exactly what
But it's
I would do.
accountability, right?
That's right.
I love it. So, hey, if you got to put it on the calendar and do a meeting invite, make it happen.
It's gonna make it
I love it.
Make it happen.
Okay. So we talked about covenant.
Yes.
We talked about connection. We talked about community. We just talked about consistency. We got one more. This is 5 truths to breathe life into your marriage. So we got one more.
Can I take that?
Nope.
Can I do
Go
the
ahead.
last one?
Nope.
No, I want it.
want- you
I
want
want
it?
it.
No.
I want it. No, me.
We all can talk about it.
No, you go ahead, Carlos.
We can. So the last one that we want to breathe life into marriages is called constraint. And so when you think about constraint, you're like, well, what do you mean by constraint? Well, we equate that to discipline. And so I go to the scripture that in 2 Timothy 1:7, it says that God did not give us the spirit of fear, but of love, power, and it says a sound mind, but you can also substitute that sound mind for self-discipline. And so are we disciplined enough to just make sure that when we say we're going to do something as a couple, are we doing that? And it actually marries extremely well with consistency.
Yeah.
Are we very disciplined to say we're going to take care of the 6 core areas that we talk about,
Yes,
right?
which is
faith, family, finance, fitness, future, and fun. Are we disciplined enough in those areas to take our marriage to the next level, to understand what that looks like? Because sometimes I don't want to go work out. I'm just going to be honest. I don't want to do it, but I want to be well for my wife. I want to feel well for my wife. So I have to work out for myself just to make sure that I'm disciplined enough, because it makes a difference. I don't want to be on pills and all of that for my health. And that's just one example. And the same thing in my finances, right? I want to be disciplined enough so that we can live well. And not only just for us, but then we can create a surplus to be able to pour back into the kingdom. How do we do that? But we've got to be very disciplined and consistency. And I see a lot of people, they don't have both of those truths to really maximize what God has for them in their relationship.
I look at it, this constraint thing, as what can I pull back on that's less of a priority than Sonia?
Ooh, that's good too.
And if I can clear the clouds a little bit by not, and I'm here to tell you, I'm not great at it. I'm working at it.
We all are working at it.
Right. And, if I'm going to be focused on getting our marriage where I want it to be, I'm going to have to pull doing these things that I love to do that are for myself so that I can focus more and be more disciplined on doing some of these other things.
Mhm.
That's how I look at constraint.
Mhm.
Let me pull back how I'm making an effort to get that next level at my job, because if I can only put in another 4 hours here and then all of a sudden a week later you realize that you've got some stuff you have undone
Mhm.
in your marriage, right?
Those 4 hours times 5 that's 20 hours.
20
That's right.
additional
That's right.
hours.
You
So-
did 20, yeah.
So keep that priority. You keep that prioritization, in a certain situation. So that constraint is, for me, is certainly about discipline, but discipline and what am I pulling off of this plate to make
Yes.
sure that Sonia is getting everything that she deserves and I'm
Yes.
serving her properly.
Correct.
I like really.
You do?
Uh-huh.
Why?
It's just making me think
I
about
love it.
I'm just thinking about what I could do. Is there anything, when you said it in that way, it made me think about all of what we have on our plate. Is there
Mhm.
something that I can pull back? I know for me, fitness and being centered is very important
Yes.
to me, because when I don't feel like I've gotten my fitness in, it just affects so
I'm the
many
same
other
way.
areas.
Yep.
And so making sure that I make that a priority helps me. But I also have prayed for Carlos to get find a place where he could do fitness,
Mhm.
because we were trying to do it together and our schedules was just not, it was actually becoming just really tension, because I'm just like, I'm trying to get up
Mhm.
and so I said, we want to be disciplined in this area. And the way to do that is, maybe you find something that you can do. And it's just so happened that he was able to find a
Well,
group,
you found it for me.
I did.
You found it.
a group of men
Mhm.
that he could work out with, which I'm so excited. So he's so
Yeah.
excited. And now we can go to bed early because he know he has to get up early. So
And it's free.
usually,
So financially it works. I'm like,
You've
I
incorporated
gotta go to
all the
bed.
F's there.
So
Yeah.
he's been disciplined
Yeah.
and constrained about
Good.
staying up to 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning.
So you guys
do
work
that.
together on that.
Yes,
We
we
did.
did.
Absolutely work together on
We
that.
did.
Absolutely.
And it's, a lot of that is, I'm talking about constraint and pulling off things
Mhm.
so that I can devote maybe there's some of those things that are on my plate that I can work with Sonia on.
Yes.
Right? And I'm not thinking like that. And I always try, like, hey, Sonia, I'm going for a run. You want to go with me?
No, it's not in my time frame.
I'm going to walk.
I am not disciplined in workout at all. So what you said really spoke to me, Carlos, about you need to be fit for your spouse. Like, I just look at it, I don't really feel like it. Oh, it's too hot. Oh no,
Honey,
if it's
you are
cooler
fit. You
outside.
are fit and most beautiful to me.
Oh, thank you, but that is not true.
Are you calling me a liar?
No, I'm calling myself not fit. But there's just so much to learn from that. I've never really looked at it from that perspective because I'm so bad with self-discipline to get things done.
Just in that area, right?
Just in that area.
Yeah.
And I
But
think that
she's
comes
very
with
disciplined in other areas. Where,
Okay, that's a whole nother.
That's a whole series. Okay, so let's just recap this
Yes.
as we're wrapping up. These are 5 truths to breathe life into your marriage. We hope you've been encouraged and inspired by this thing. We certainly have. Every time we sit down and do this thing, we all learn ourselves, and we're hoping that you guys feel that and that you yourselves are inspired by that. We certainly want to hear from you. Social media, you guys know, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all that great stuff. We certainly would love to get that feedback and right now are loving what you guys are bringing to us now. But let's just recap these 5 truths to breathe life into your marriage. We got covenant, connection, community, consistency, and constraint.
Mhm.
Wow, they all start with C.
Yes.
I
How
bet
did
you
they
someone
do
figured that out when they were listening to us. We've got smart listeners.
Yes,
We've got a
Yes, we
smart
do.
community.
Yes, we do. And if you're really smart, you'll subscribe to this podcast.
Way
How
to
about
go.
that for a segue?
Yes.
Can I say this before you put? I just want to make sure that they get. I
Stop
can't say it
asking me.
again.
Just talk.
Just do it.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that I want to end too with the scripture that we started with.
Yes, please.
Proverbs 3:3-4. Let love and faithfulness, all these things that we've been talking about tonight, never leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man. I love that scripture.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, everybody. I guess without further ado, let's get
Powered up.
Thanks for listening to the Power Couples Rock podcast. We hope that you've been encouraged, inspired, and supported. Please listen and subscribe to our other PowerPods, as we are confident that they will strengthen your marriage. Also, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. It's there where we can extend these discussions together, take these conversations and your marriage to the next level. Enjoy your day and power up.